We're living in complicated times in which information can be spread throughout the internet, television, social media in general. That is pretty good because people get to step away outside of their bubbles, their socialist tracts, their countries, their continents even, but that can be very dangerous as well. And journalists have this difficult job of reporting and informing the society in the 21st century. Therefore, they should have total freedom of expression with no censorship, even from the government. The internet, spreading information became easier than it already was. For example, as you can see here in the TV, we have a YouTube channel of a newspaper, really a traditional newspaper from Brazil. A person in Australia can read a news that's being published in Brazil within seconds. People can be aware of what's going on anywhere in the world, as I already mentioned. But since their public, their audience, which means the people who will be reading the newspaper, probably aren't in the same place that the reporter is. For example, someone's doing a story about Syrian refugees in Europe for a Brazilian newspaper. The public will be from Brazil and they won't be in Europe. So the journalist needs to be as loyal to the situation as he can possibly be. Of course, there's a matter of interpretation, what he thinks, what he doesn't, but in general, he needs to speak and write the whole truth. If the reporter is censored of his freedom of expression, which means if the reporter is not able to write the whole truth, the public will be highly jeopardized because they won't be aware of the whole truth and they can start to make up things, they can be uninformed, they can be windbags, they can be whatever but people who speak the truth, because they will start interpreting what they want from the article and not, well, what actually is going on, because they don't know what's going on, right? Since the person who wrote the article was censored. To summarize, the lack of freedom of speech can generate uninformed and windbag persons. A lot of information is published daily. More than 2 million articles are published on the web every single day. That without counting, blogs and printed papers. So there's a lot of different information going around. But the emphasis of the article or what certain newspapers, the type of news that certain newspapers want to communicate is different according to the newspaper's political views. You remember we were seeing here before Estadão, which is it is considered in Brazil a right-wing newspaper. Here we have a more left-wing newspaper in Brazil, which is Carta Capital. This is their YouTube channel. Here, for example, we have a candidate who ran with Fernando Haddad from PT, which is also a left-wing party. So this is a good example of how different newspapers and different writers choose to write about different things. Or sometimes they choose to write about the same things but giving different emphasis. According to the Brazilian Constitution of 1988, freedom of expression is a natural right of the individuals. So, for a government or anyone in the Brazilian society to censor others is to be violating a constitutional right. It is true that some people can be offensive on their articles or their comments on their comments online. But I believe that the population should retaliate, should explain to that person why she's being offensive, not the government. More than just in Brazil, Freedom of speech is a human right that is assured in the Human Rights Declaration. So, to be violating the right to freedom of expression is also to be violating the human rights. Even more than that, it is to be violating democracy itself, because by not allowing people access to information, for example, the government not allowing people for information usually means that the government doesn't want people to know about something that they're doing. Examples of governments who have deprived people of information are the Nazis or Mussolini or the USSR and Stalin. Those were all authoritarian governments that highly jeopardized the society, the population, people who tortured people, who murdered people. We don't want that to happen to us. We don't want that to happen to our country. So in order for that not to happen, we need to make sure that our journalists have the right to freedom of expression. To summarize everything, journalists should have total freedom of expression. No government, no person, no company should be able to censor them, since they have this difficult job that is reporting and informing in the 21st century. As explained, they have to report information regarding different countries. They have to report information regarding their own government. They have to report regarding all aspects of life. That is no easy job.